I'd like to introduce Amanda Aragon from ConocoPhillips. Give it up.
Biggest concern is that I probably have lettuce in my teeth because I reverted right back into college student mode and I was like, free food, I'll be there. But thank you guys so much for coming. Honestly, I travel around the state talking about ConocoPhillips and oil and gas with Wally quite a bit. And there's very few times that we can get really anyone interested in hearing anything about oil and gas, but especially students in New Mexico. So I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your class schedules to be here and to listen to what we have to say about the industry that I work for. I'll give you a little bit of background in myself. Number one, I'm from New Mexico, but number two, don't hate me, I'm not a UNM grad, so let's get that out of the way really quick. I know, boo. I totally expect to be booed for that in this room. So, I grew up in Rio Rancho. I graduated from Rio Rancho High School, and then I left for college, and I went to the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. And this is the exact problem that we're trying to fix, and this is why I was so excited when I got Pia's email, because it is a very serious problem for our industry in New Mexico. Never once in the whole 18 years that I lived in New Mexico did anyone ever mention oil and gas to me. Working for an oil and gas company, the fact that we had oil and gas in New Mexico, if you don't live in Hobbs or you don't live in Farmington, you may not know about it. So growing up in Albuquerque, no clue. 2 years into college, the school that I went to has a really great petroleum engineering program, so very oil and gas intensive. Someone said, hey Amanda, have you ever thought about working for an oil and gas company? Because then you can move back to New Mexico. And I literally said, does New Mexico have oil and gas? I didn't know. I had no idea that it was such a, that it was a part of our economy. I'll quiz you in a little bit. And I certainly didn't know that it would provide such amazing career opportunities for myself and now some of my family members. And I could come back to New Mexico. So I interned with ConocoPhillips in our Bartlesville office, which is about an hour north of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then I got a full-time job offer to work in Houston. And I was a little bit overwhelmed. I never lived in a city like, are you from Houston?
I am.
Please forgive me for what I'm about to say. So, no, I like Houston. It was great. But it was super overwhelming coming from a city like Albuquerque and moving to a place where there's 4 million people. And we have about 3,000 employees in Houston, and you're parking in big parking garages, and it's just like, it's crazy. So, and I really miss green chili. So about a year in, they asked if I wanted to transfer to our Farmington office. Anyone play soccer in here? One couple. So I'd only ever been to Farmington for soccer tournaments, and was like, oh, Farmington.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, I miss my family, so yeah, I'll go. Farmington's actually a super great place to live. People are really nice, and I got to come back home. So I've been in the Farmington office for almost 5 years now, which is crazy to me, because I still feel like I just graduated college like 2 months ago. So that's kind of a little bit of my background and how I got started working with oil and gas. I really can't, it's one of those situations where I think about how this happened and how I got to be where I am today, and it just worked out perfectly. I really could not imagine, and I mean this very sincerely, working in an industry that provides what this industry has provided for me. You guys for those of you that grew up in New Mexico, we certainly have our challenges, and we have a lot of economic challenges. There are very few industries that you can work in that will provide you the financial and career opportunities that oil and gas will. Totally honest, like, I don't know how I got so lucky, because it is a wonderful place to work, and my family has seen like the complete trajectory of what my lifestyle was growing up versus what my lifestyle is and will be for my children and grandchildren and so on and so forth. So much to the fact where I have a younger cousin, my youngest cousin, his name's Dylan. You're going to boo again, but he's a junior at New Mexico Tech. But he's studying petroleum engineering specifically because of what he's seen in my career and his experience with oil and gas for me. So I certainly would appreciate or would encourage you guys to look into careers. When I saw the rollout of all the online ads and the video, I am obsessed with it, and they didn't pay me to be here, so I really mean this. Like powering our world, there are so few people that really understand every day what it means to work in oil and gas. And I'm the public relations girl, so there's a lot of rooms that I walk into in New Mexico, and Wally will understand this as well. People aren't that friendly towards us. Very rarely do we get applauded. People like to say, oil and gas, it's just awful, and wouldn't the world be so much better without it? No, it wouldn't. Because how many of you guys have homes that are heated with natural gas or propane? It should be about 90% of you, because in New Mexico, if you add those two, that's about what the statistic is. So when I have middle school students who, and Frank up here, he works with me as well. Frank and I were at an event with middle school and high school students, and this little girl walked up to us and she said, "Excuse me, did you know that you guys are killing Mother Earth?" And I was like, wow, okay. Woo, let's unpack this a little bit. And where this little girl was coming from was, we don't need it for cars. And I said, okay, so say we take cars out of the picture, take gasoline out of the picture completely. And I won't even talk to you about where electricity comes from and other sources of energy and why natural gas is better. So I'll leave that for another day. But do you like hot showers? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, do you have any idea what my job has to do with you taking a hot shower this morning or having the heater on in your home? And she said, no, I really don't. So we talked about natural gas and how it heats homes and just like all of its capabilities in our everyday uses. I grew up on a diet of like beans and tortillas, and I love natural gas stoves because I think they do a way better job of heating your tortillas than like a toaster oven. So just things like that people don't understand about the way that the world works. And one of the things that Frank says a lot that I really have stolen from him and used quite a bit is that as a producer of energy and having the abundance of energy that America has, it is really hard for us as a country to say, let's not produce this amazing resource and let's not put it on the world market. Because we get the benefit of that. But people in other countries that don't have energy and don't have electricity and don't have power and don't know what it's like to live with hot water or showers or any of that kind of stuff, it's pretty indignant of us to say like, oh, look at this great lifestyle that we have, and let's not share that with the world. Like, what we do literally powers the world. And our mission statement at ConocoPhillips is, we exist to power civilization. When I first heard it, we came out with it in 2012. I was like, I hate that. It sounds like so Hunger Gamesy. But after a couple of years of really like thinking about it and using it quite a bit, I really do like it, because if you're in oil and gas, that's what we do. We power civilization. We allow things to move forward. This manufacturing renaissance that the United States has seen, that's been great for everyone, for business, for consumers, for everyone. A large part of that has been because of the abundance and affordability of natural gas in the United States. All of those jobs that we had sent abroad because it was cheaper to manufacture things there, we're now bringing back home. That's great for us, that's great for the manufacturers, that's great for everyone. So whereas a lot of people look at me and say, oh, I can't believe you work for an oil and gas company, you must have no soul, I feel the complete opposite. I take a great, great pride in what I do every day and what my company does every day. And I'll tell you a little bit more about ConocoPhillips specifically. I think we're the best oil and gas company, obviously. But I can assure you that any concern that you have about whatever your concerns about oil and gas might be, we'll have a conversation. I'll say we can have a conversation, Frank will have a conversation, Wally will have a conversation, because we're doing the right things. And when we realize that maybe we're not doing the best, we do better. So we don't shy away from problems, we don't try and hide what we do. We're very, at least our company and what I've seen in the industry as a whole, we're very transparent. We really do try and do the right things, and we really are trying to work to produce energy as cleanly and as responsibly as possible. So that's kind of my thing. I'm going to let Wally tell you guys more about the impact that oil and gas has on New Mexico. Anyone have any idea? So the state general fund, I'm totally going to steal your thing, Wally. Just kidding. Wally will tell you, but it's a really important part of the state. And so I work hard really every day to kind of fix that, going back to that problem statement that I mentioned. For a state that thrives on oil and gas the way that New Mexico does, it is essential that we have people, students like you, here at New Mexico's flagship university, talking about oil and gas and being excited about the potential of working in our industry, because that more than anything is business leaders and students and people in Albuquerque saying, hey, let's talk about oil and gas and let's have a responsible conversation about oil and gas. Because I could convince everyone in Farmington, and we have, because they see the benefits of it every day. So people in Farmington, Aztec, Bloomfield, Hobbs, Artesia, Jal, they love what we do. There's just simply not enough of them to move central New Mexico. So we realize that we have to be in Albuquerque, in Santa Fe, in Las Cruces every day, opening up this conversation and saying, hey, pay attention to us, and not just the bad things that you think we do, but let's talk about the good things. Let's talk about economic development. Let's talk about jobs. Let's talk about what we do and what energy means to New Mexico and kind of how that changes the dynamic of our economy moving forward. So after Wally, I can tell you guys a little bit about employment opportunities for ConocoPhillips. I'll be the bad guy and tell you the bad news right now. If you pay attention to oil and gas prices, things are not great for our industry right now. We are a very cyclical industry, so there's hard times and there's great times. What I can tell you is the hard times in oil and gas, they're not that hard. It just means we don't get free soda at the office anymore. So I have to pay 50 cents for soda now. That's not that bad. So we can talk a little bit about that after Wally's done, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you very much. Up next, from the New Mexico Oil and Gas Company Association is Mr. Wally Drangmeister. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yay! Give him a warm welcome.
There we go.
There it is.
Well, I accidentally got an accounting degree at a little Cal college in Las Cruces. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. You beat us twice in basketball and once in football this last year. But while your basketball players were sleeping in their dorm rooms in their apartments, our basketball team was playing in the NCAA. Okay, now that you love me. Okay, I grew up in Silver City, New Mexico. I've been in New Mexico all my life, with the exception of one summer spent in Midland, Odessa, little place out there in West Texas. So, again, an accidental CPA that has moved now into the communication realm, but because I do know numbers, I like to use those in a way to not bore you to death, but to educate you. And a couple of slides I want to do, and I want to say that these slides come from a presentation that was used this last November to educate new legislators that were just elected to the New Mexico legislature. So it's not like there's one story for you and one for somebody else. This is the story about what's going on in our industry. And so I'm not going to do all of this, but it's one of those, why would we even care about energy? In 2 slides, the world uses energy. The United States is on a pretty flat trajectory. China and the rest of Asia is on a huge upward trajectory. And so when we talk about energy problems nationally and internationally, I want you to keep that in mind. The other is, this slide shows where does energy come from and where is energy likely to come from up through 2040. This slide is from the Energy Information Administration. And what it shows is that these are the relative shares. Liquids is basically oil and gas, or oil in the liquid part of natural gas, excuse me. So natural gas liquids like propane, butane, and other things. So the point is, the all above energy strategy is not a fantasy or fiction. It's the reality. And I'll show you one more slide that will really drive that home. It's very busy, but it kind of really does make the point. I'll leave these slides for you. I'll make a copy when I get back to my office, and it'll be at namoga.org/UNM. So I'll put a copy of this in PDF format. But what this shows is the various forms of energy, where it comes from and what it's used for. And so a lot of times people say, well, wind and solar now account for this % of energy use. Usually they mean electricity, because we don't use wind and solar for transportation. Oil and gas is transportation, 99.9%. Now, there are a few Teslas and a few golf carts out there, and there will be more of those in the future. But the challenge I do for middle school students is I challenge them to tell me what they have in the way of a product that doesn't have anything to do with oil and natural gas. And they've yet to be able to bring a product to me. You know, the closest you get is somebody on the Navajo Nation who does something, but you know, sooner or later, that Indian blanket is put into a pickup truck and driven to market. So it touches our lives, whether we want it to or not. It's huge to the not only industrialized world, but even the success and progress of the non-industrialized world, as Amanda alluded to a little more. So just a couple more, and I'm going to blow through some of these. You know, this is where oil and gas is. It's in the 2 corners of the state. There's other areas like around Las Vegas, New Mexico. You might have heard of Mora, New Mexico, where there are natural gas deposits there. But this is a business, and if it costs more to get something out of the ground than you can get to sell it, it's not an asset, it's not a resource until that time. But also prices go up and down. Go ahead. No. Oh, got it. Okay, so, So I'm going to say, why are things slow right now? A few years ago, oil's $100 a barrel. Today it's $50 a barrel. Name a business that's not going to be impacted by having their revenue, their prices cut in half in a matter of a few months. Natural gas prices have been low for a long time. They've bumped around, but now they're under $3 a thousand cubic feet, or MCF. Back when it was $8 per MCF, there were 40 or 50 drilling rigs in the Farmington area where natural gas is that were drilling for natural gas. Today, under $3, none. So a couple other slides, and then I'll get into some more general comments. So today, 266, or at least of April 5th, it bounces around a little bit. Drilling rigs, you drill a well, it produces the most oil and gas it's going to produce within its first year, and it tapers off. So if you don't have new drilling, guess what? Eventually, the field you're in, the production will go away. So drilling rigs is always a good leading indicator of what's going on, and it's a big employer. We had over 100 drilling rigs in the state of New Mexico at the end of the year. We're down to 50. Now, it's limbo. How low can it go? I have a number in my mind. I have no idea if it's right. I think if the prices stay in its current range, I think it'll probably stabilize in the 35 to 40 range. But there's a lot of things at play that you don't know the facts. And everyone who acts like they know for sure, they're just kidding you, because they could be making, if they knew, they'd make millions, if not billions, in the oil and gas futures market, just like in the stock market, if you knew exactly what was going to happen. Okay, now.
But can you say why the price of oil is going down?
Great, thank you, good question. Who's the number one oil and gas producing country? What's the number one oil and gas producing country in the world?
Saudi Arabia.
United States of America. We're number one. Now, if you take natural gas liquids away from that, in oil, we're right there, right below Saudi Arabia. But if you put natural gas liquids, we're clearly ahead of them. We surpassed Russia in natural gas. The combination of horizontal drilling, where instead of just drilling down, you drill horizontally, and improvements in exploration technology using better computer graphing of the subsurface, and the required, not optional, the required process of hydraulic fracturing has brought an energy renaissance in the United States. Back in 2007, The state of New Mexico is producing about 60 million barrels of oil a year. This last year, we produced 125 million barrels of oil a year, a level not seen since the late 70s, which was much more back, and you guys are probably, okay, I'll ask. This is the make me feel old moment. Who here has seen an episode of the Beverly Hillbillies? All right, better than I thought. But there used to be, at the beginning of that, up through the ground came a bubbling crude. Well, there is oil around the world in very shallow pockets that don't require much to get them out. For the 99% of those, they're gone. So now we're digging deeper, and it's in rock formations, tight sandstones, and shales where we're producing in the U.S., where if I were to set a core sample here, it wouldn't look like an oily rock to you. There would be no oil that would come out of it. It's a rock. And so without creating these underground microfractures about the size of a human hair that allow the oil and gas to flow, we would not be able to have the production in the U.S. A few years ago, they used to say there's no way we can drill our way to lower gasoline prices. Guess what? That was wrong. We are almost a victim of our own success. We have the Middle East, the Saudis are not reducing production. A lot of people say it's to punish our industry. I think they're not doing it because they know if they reduce their production, there's enough other sources that they would lose market share. So we're competing on price now, like competitive free markets are designed to do, as opposed to the fiats of oil and gas ministers in our country or any other country for that matter. All right, now, this slide here, it shows for the past several years what percentage of the general fund is attributable to oil and gas. One of the major things that the general fund is used for is higher education and public schools. So a huge number, a huge amount, and I have a new study that will be out in a couple weeks that will show the most recent amount that went to the University of New Mexico. But of the hundreds of millions of dollars that the state of New Mexico gives to the University of New Mexico for its mission to pay for teachers, to pay for operations, right at a third of that long-term comes from the oil and gas industry. So if you look around, every professor you have, without oil and gas, there would tend to be one fewer, all things being equal. There tend to be 1/3 fewer students. Or the corollary, everything would cost 1/3 more. Your tuition would be 1/3 more. You'd have to have loans of 1/3 more. We'd have to get other sources of federal grants and other things that are used to fund the university. So it's a huge part of the business. All right, and let me see if there's anything else. There's some more details about that. On this sheet, I will not run it now, but on the presentation, there's a link to a hydraulic fracturing video that goes over the process. It's a great video. I tell you, there's over 50,000 wells in the state of New Mexico. Those that have been drilled in the past 25 years, the overwhelming majority of them have been treated with hydraulic fracturing. If there was no hydraulic fracturing, there basically wouldn't be an oil and gas industry in New Mexico, with the very small exception of they had these coal seam gas wells in northwest New Mexico, which they're not drilling anymore because natural gas prices are so low. But the industry would basically not be here. So it's not an optional process. So what should we do? I was telling our host before, I'm old enough that when I was in college, oil prices were so low that some of my friends and associates, particularly those in chemical engineering, were unable to get jobs in the engineering field. Back then, oil prices were somewhere between $8 and $12 a barrel when they were getting out of college. After some successful stints as an assistant manager at Long John Silver's, once my friend Todd, once the price of oil came back up, he got a job working in the oil and gas industry, and things went well from there. Today is not the best time to get a job in the oil and gas industry, but this industry is cyclical. It's gone up and down. We've been there before, and if it's something you're interested in, there are so many fields that you can do. from the upstream is where the oil is produced, you know, the exploration, the technology around that, the drilling technology, the optimization, midstream where the oil and products are moved and processed, and then downstream where it's distributed. There's a lot of great opportunities. And to second Amanda's statement with regarding to be a great industry to work for, I've worked in a few industries, like I've worked in mining, I've worked in utilities, I've worked in financial services. This is the best industry I've worked in. I have not once, as communication director, ever had to tell anyone anything where the little voice in the back of your head says, are you giving them the whole truth? That voice does not go off. We are very open. We have huge opposition from a certain small segment of the environmental community that somehow we could get rid of oil and gas and run this world on wind and solar. Not today, we can't. Not without batteries. It's just not in the cards, and likely isn't for 20, 30, 40 years. Now, does that mean that those other forms of energy are bad? Far from it. It's an all of the above, and frankly, we need some newer ones. We need some developments in nuclear and other things to maintain our standard of living, to maintain our economy. And as Amanda alluded to, we really do think in this industry that the way to solve our problems is to have abundant and cheap energy and manage the environmental costs, as opposed to making the swaths of the world that are the second world and the third world, as opposed to absolutely prohibiting them from developing and doing what we all want to do, is have a higher standard of living. The correlation between energy use and standard of living has a huge correlation, almost a 1-to-1 correlation. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do better. Efficiency is big. Japan is ahead of us for other reasons. The U.S. has made great strides in energy efficiency. There will be a lot of those, but you cannot energy efficiency your way to a successful economy. You need supplies of energy, and that's what we're in the business of doing. So I will turn it back to our moderator. If you don't get your question answered during the formal part, I'll hang around as long as we can. And again, if you want to see this presentation in detail, nmoga.org/ and I'll put UNM, and I'll keep that up there for 2 or 3 weeks. You'll be able to download it, get some more information, and look at that. All right?
Thank you so much. That's really, really cool. Okay, real quick, did you want to come up?
Sure, yeah.
Anything else?
So one of the things that we're trying to do is really broaden our exposure here on campus. So we're working with UNM in a variety of disciplines, business, engineering. ConocoPhillips does have what we call core recruiting universities, and we're really working to get UNM up to that level for us, because I want UNM students working for us up in Farmington and in our office in Hobbs. In the meantime, as we work on that and we try and grow our presence at career fairs and with internships and things like that, of course, you can visit our website, which is conocophillips.com/careers, and there's a section on there specifically towards, I think they call it like university new hires or recent grads or something like that. So that will have your information about internships and jobs. Again, probably not the best year to start looking there, but if you're like a sophomore, junior, around that time frame, you're probably timing this about right. We do offer internships. We bring in roughly 26 interns every summer. They get a living stipend to pay for room and board. They get paid, and they do real world projects. So they're not like making copies or making coffee. They're doing real projects, and then they present to our leadership team. At the end of each summer, that's their exit interview, is essentially a 45-minute long presentation. So those opportunities hopefully will be available to you guys in the summers moving forward as we kind of broaden our exposure here on UNM. But I think I have a couple business cards with me. We do have a newer website. It's oh gosh, I might get fired for this. ConocoPhillips US 48, I think. It's not the easiest thing to remember, but I can write it down. The ConocoPhillips.com website is really us as a global company. The one I just told you about really focuses on our work here in the United States, and I believe you can find my contact information off that site, but it's probably easier if I just jot down my email for you. So if you have any specific questions for me about jobs or internship possibilities, feel free to let me know. Thank you.